The small town was quiet, almost too quiet for someone who loved music. People went about their days with predictable routines, and the local school was more focused on sports than art. There were whispers that some students were talented, but no one had really paid attention to a shy girl who always seemed to sit at the back of the class. Her hair was always tied neatly, and she wore simple clothes that didn't draw attention. She was polite, never caused trouble, and always did her homework on time. But that was where most people stopped noticing her. From the moment she could walk, she had been fascinated by sounds. The soft rhythm of raindrops, the hum of the refrigerator at night, the gentle creaking of the old wooden floorboards in her house, all of it captivated her. Her parents noticed it first when she would tap out patterns on the dining table or hum along with the radio. They weren't wealthy and they couldn't afford music lessons, but they encouraged her curiosity. Her father would hum tunes for her, and her mother would let her play on the little keyboard they bought secondhand at a garage sale out at first. Her playing was messy. Fingers slipped, notes clashed, and the sounds were nothing like the music she heard in her mind. But she didn't give up. She would spend hours after school, sometimes until late at night, practicing alone in her room. She listened carefully to the piano pieces on the radio and tried to copy them, learning by ear because there were no teachers to guide her. The piano became her friend, her companion, the place where she could express feelings she couldn't put into words. The other kids in school didn't know this about her. To them, she was just quiet and unremarkable. School was not an easy place for her. Teachers overlooked her when giving opportunities, and classmates sometimes laughed at her for being too serious or too shy. There was a certain girl in her grade who was confident and outgoing, always the center of attention. She had friends who would dominate conversations and group activities. The quiet girl never complained, but she watched. She observed the world carefully, and in her mind, she practiced patience. Understanding that her time would come in its own way, the first big moment arrived when the school announced a talent show. Most students signed up with dances, singing, or funny skits. The confident kids smirked when they saw her name on the sign-up sheet. "She can't even talk in class, and she's performing," they whispered. She didn't respond. She simply practiced. She found an old, worn piano in the school music room and played every day after classes. Sometimes she would slip in at lunch, avoiding the chatter of the cafeteria, letting her fingers flow over the keys. Music wasn't about proving something to others. It was about the connection she felt when her fingers pressed the notes and the sounds filled the room. As the talent show drew closer, whispers turned into jokes. Students would tease her gently, not realizing how serious she was about her craft. "Maybe she'll just play a few keys and stop," they said. Teachers smiled politely, unsure what to expect. No one really believed she could surprise anyone. On the night of the show, the auditorium was packed. Parents, teachers, and students filled every seat, the room buzzing with excitement. The confident performers went first. They danced, sang, and acted, receiving applause and cheers. When her turn came, there was a moment of silence. She walked onto the stage quietly, dressed simply, and approached the grand piano that had been set up for the event. Some students snickered quietly, certain that the performance would be short and forgettable. She sat on the piano bench and closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling the weight of the keys under her fingers. Then she began to play. The first notes were gentle, almost hesitant, but each one carried emotion. Slowly, the music grew in strength, and the auditorium became quiet except for the sound of the piano. Her fingers danced across the keys with a grace and confidence that no one had expected. Every note was precise, yet full of feeling. The music swelled and softened, building a story without words, and the people watching began to sit up straighter. Drawn in by the beauty they hadn't anticipated, the confident students who had laughed before were now wide-eyed, unable to look away. Teachers whispered to each other, impressed by the skill and passion coming from someone they had underestimated. Parents shifted in their seats, some with tears forming as the music stirred memories and emotions they hadn't felt in years. Every crescendo, every delicate passage told a story of patience, dedication, and quiet determination. She wasn't just playing notes. She was speaking directly to the hearts of everyone in the room. By the time she finished, there was a pause so deep it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. Then the auditorium erupted in applause. People stood, cheering, clapping, and even shouting her name. Some students were stunned into silence, unable to comprehend how someone they had ignored or underestimated could create something so powerful. The quiet girl rose from the bench, bowed, and walked off stage without a word. Her face remained calm, but inside, she felt a warmth she had never experienced before. That night, after the show, she walked home slowly, carrying the echoes of the music and the applause in her mind. The streets were quiet, and snow had begun to fall, covering the town in a soft white blanket. She thought about the hours she had spent practicing, the moments of doubt, the times she had been ignored or laughed at. None of that mattered anymore. She had proven, if not to the whole world, at least to herself, that talent and dedication couldn't be hidden forever. The next day at school, whispers followed her in the hallways. Students who had mocked her now looked at her with respect, some with envy and some with curiosity. Teachers approached her to compliment her performance, asking if she would perform again at other events. The girl listened politely, smiled softly, and continued with her day as if nothing had changed. But inside, she knew that the world had begun to see her in a new light. Her parents, who had stayed in the back of the auditorium, felt immense pride. They had always believed in her, even when no one else did. That night, they hugged her tightly at home, telling her how proud they were. She smiled, feeling a mix of relief and joy. Music had always been her sanctuary, but now it had also become her bridge to the world, connecting her with people in a way words never could. From that day on, the girl was no longer the quiet, unremarkable student who blended into the background. She was the one who had surprised everyone. The one whose talent could move people. The one who had turned underestimation into triumph. And while the applause faded over time, the lesson remained. Sometimes, the most powerful stories are told not through words, but through the quiet dedication of someone who dares to believe in themselves. Her journey was only beginning. And though she faced new challenges ahead, she carried with her the certainty that her music had a voice that could never be silenced. In a world quick to judge by appearances, she had quietly proven that true talent cannot be ignored, and that patience, practice, and passion are forces that can overcome even the deepest doubts. After the talent show, life at school slowly began to change for her, but not in ways she had expected. Some students now treated her with cautious respect, though others whispered behind her back, unsure how to handle someone they had underestimated. She didn't mind either way. Her focus remained on the music, which had become more than a passion. It was now a purpose. Her mornings were quiet and peaceful, filled with the familiar sound of piano notes from the old keyboard in her room. She often experimented with melodies that came to her in dreams, trying to capture the feelings that words could never express. Sometimes, she would play so softly that the sounds barely filled the room, yet she could feel the music resonate deep inside her. It was in those moments that she felt completely herself, free from expectations and judgments. The local music teacher, who had always considered her a quiet student, finally took notice. After classes one afternoon, he approached her. "Your performance at the talent show. It was incredible," he said, his voice a mixture of surprise and admiration. "Have you ever thought about formal lessons? I think you could go far if you wanted to." She hesitated. Lessons meant money, time, and a new kind of pressure. Her parents couldn't afford private music lessons, but they wanted to support her in any way possible. I would love that," she said quietly, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The teacher smiled and promised to find a way to help. Offering after-school sessions in the school's music room, those sessions became her sanctuary. Every day after finishing homework and chores at home, she would stay late at school, her fingers dancing over the keys as the teacher guided her with gentle corrections and encouragement. She absorbed every lesson eagerly, learning new techniques and exploring music in ways she had never imagined. Slowly, her playing became even more expressive, more nuanced. Each piece she performed told a story, sometimes sorrowful, sometimes joyful, always moving the listener in a way that words could not. Meanwhile, at home, her parents noticed the changes in her. She smiled more, laughed more, and spoke more confidently about her dreams. Her father, once skeptical about the possibility of pursuing music seriously, began to see the dedication and passion in her eyes. He found small ways to support her, like fixing the piano bench so she could sit comfortably for long practice sessions, or saving up for sheet music and supplies. Her mother, always her quiet cheerleader, encouraged her to share her music with neighbors and family friends whenever she could. Together, they created an environment where her talent could thrive. As weeks turned into months, the girl started to participate in local competitions. At first she was nervous, but each time she played, she gained confidence. Judges and audiences alike were captivated by her performances, and she began to earn recognition outside her small school. Letters of encouragement from music enthusiasts started arriving, praising her skill and the emotional depth of her playing. These notes were carefully saved in a box in her room, each one a reminder of how far she had come and how much potential she had. Despite the growing attention, life was not without challenges. Some classmates, jealous of the recognition she was receiving, tried to undermine her confidence. They would make snide remarks or spread rumors, hoping she would falter. But she had learned the value of silence and focus. She didn't retaliate or argue. Instead, she let her music speak for her, knowing that true talent could not be diminished by jealousy or criticism. One afternoon, a local newspaper ran a small feature about her. A photographer had captured her playing at a recent event, fingers poised delicately over the keys, eyes closed in concentration. The article described her as a rising talent, someone to watch in the local music scene. For the first time, she saw herself reflected in someone else's words, and realized that her quiet determination was beginning to be noticed beyond the walls of her school. Encouraged by this, she started composing her own music. She would spend hours at the piano writing melodies that reflected her life, her dreams, and the emotions she sometimes struggled to express. These compositions were rough at first, filled with experimentation and trial and error, but she loved the process. Each piece was a part of her story, a piece of her soul shared with the world in the language of music. Her teacher noticed the change immediately. "You're not just playing anymore," he said one day after a long session. "You're creating. This is the sign of a true artist. Keep pushing yourself." The girl took these words to heart. She started setting goals for herself, small and achievable at first. Mastering difficult pieces, performing in local events, sharing compositions with trusted mentors. Each accomplishment became a stepping stone, and with every step, her confidence grew. The quiet girl who had once been overlooked was beginning to understand her own strength, and the world was beginning to take notice. Her family, too, became more involved. They began hosting small gatherings where she could perform for neighbors and friends. At first, she was shy, but with each performance, her comfort grew. People marveled at the depth and emotion of her playing, and she realized that music was not just for personal satisfaction, it was a gift to share with others. One of the most significant moments came when she was invited to play at a community festival. The audience was larger than any she had ever faced, and the pressure was intense. Yet, as she approached the piano and placed her fingers on the keys, she felt a familiar calm wash over her. She closed her eyes and let the music flow. Each note seemed to weave a story of perseverance, of quiet strength, of someone who had been underestimated and had risen above it. The performance was met with thunderous applause. People who had never known her were cheering, moved by the emotion in her music. Some had tears in their eyes. Others simply stared in awe, unable to comprehend how someone so unassuming could create something so powerful. For the girl, it was not about the applause or recognition. It was about knowing that her music had connected with people in a meaningful way. As the festival ended and the crowd dispersed, she walked home with a sense of peace. The journey was far from over, and there were still challenges ahead. But she now understood something important. Her talent and dedication could open doors that no one else could. The world had underestimated her once, but she had learned that patience, focus, and passion could transform that doubt into opportunity in the days that followed. Her life continued to balance between school, family, and music. She faced moments of frustration, like any student, But each obstacle became a lesson. Learning to deal with criticism, managing nerves before performances, and navigating the expectations of others, all of these experiences shaped her into not just a better pianist, but a stronger, more confident individual. Her story began to inspire those around her. Younger students who had once ignored her now approached her for advice, eager to learn from someone who had proven that quiet determination could lead to extraordinary results. Teachers started to involve her in mentoring programs, encouraging other students to explore their talents and pursue their passions. Through it all, the girl remained humble. She understood that talent was only part of the journey. Hard work, patience, and resilience were just as important. Each day brought new challenges and opportunities, and she faced them with the same quiet strength that had carried her. Through the early days of practice alone in her room, by the end of that year, she had transformed not only her own life, but also the perceptions of those around her. The girl who had once been underestimated at the piano had become a symbol of what dedication and passion could achieve. And though she knew there were many more milestones ahead, she faced the future with confidence, ready to embrace every note, every composition, and every opportunity that came her way. By the time the following year began, the quiet girl had become something of a local sensation. People in her town were beginning to recognize her talent and dedication, but she remained modest and focused, never letting praise or attention distract her from her goal to become the best pianist she could be. Her life revolved around school, family, and music, each day bringing new lessons, new challenges, and new discoveries. One morning, as she walked into the music room at school, she noticed a small flyer pinned to the bulletin board. It announced a regional piano competition for young musicians. The grand prize included not only recognition, but also the chance to perform at a prestigious concert hall in the city. Her heart raced. This was an opportunity she could not pass up, but it also filled her with nervous anticipation. She had never competed on such a big stage before. She spent the next few weeks preparing relentlessly. Every free moment was spent at the piano, mastering the pieces she had chosen for the competition. She faced difficulties she had never encountered before: complex compositions, fast passages that demanded precision, and emotional expressions that needed to reach the audience. It was exhausting, but she welcomed the challenge. Her parents watched her practice tirelessly, offering quiet support and encouragement. Her father would occasionally bring her warm tea and a snack, and her mother would remind her to take short breaks and care for herself. They knew the competition was important. They also wanted her to enjoy the process. At school, her peers noticed her dedication. Some were impressed, some were still envious, but none could deny the transformation that had occurred over the past year. She walked with a quiet confidence now, her eyes reflecting determination and focus. Even those who had mocked her in the past began to show respect, approaching her cautiously to ask questions or share words of encouragement. When the day of the competition arrived, the girl felt a mix of excitement and fear. She had never traveled to the city alone, and the concert hall was enormous, filled with lights, cameras, and an audience that seemed much larger than anything she had faced before. As she walked onto the stage, her hands slightly trembling, she reminded herself that she had practiced for this moment countless times. She took a deep breath, seated herself at the grand piano, and let the music flow. From the first note, the audience was captivated. Her performance was flawless, yet full of feeling. Each movement of her fingers conveyed a story, emotions pouring out of her in a way that transcended language. The judges, renowned musicians themselves, watched with growing admiration. They whispered to each other, impressed by the depth and maturity of her playing. Even the other competitors, some of whom had years of formal training, were stunned by her skill and the passion in her performance as she played. She thought of all the hours she had spent alone in her room, the quiet evenings practicing while others were asleep, and the support of her family. Every struggle, every moment of doubt, every small victory in her journey had led her to this stage. She poured her heart into the music, letting it speak for her in a way that words never could. When the final note rang out, the auditorium erupted into applause. People rose to their feet, cheering and clapping with enthusiasm. The girl stood, bowed respectfully, and walked off stage, her heart pounding with a mixture of relief and joy. She had given her all, and the reaction from the audience was beyond anything she had imagined. Later, the judges announced the results. She had won first place. The recognition was overwhelming, and she felt a sense of pride and accomplishment unlike anything before. Her parents embraced her tightly, their eyes glistening with tears. They had always believed in her, and now the world was seeing what they had known all along. She smiled, feeling both humble and elated. The victory was not just about winning. It was about proving to herself that dedication and perseverance could lead to extraordinary results. In the weeks that followed, her life began to change in ways she had never anticipated. Local news outlets ran stories about her success, and invitations to perform at various events started arriving. She was now recognized not only in her town but also in the surrounding region as a talented and promising young pianist. Despite the attention, she remained grounded. She knew that talent was only part of the journey. Hard work and continued practice were essential to growth. Her teacher, proud and supportive, encouraged her to take the next step, enrolling in a music academy in the city. It was a prestigious institution known for producing world-class musicians, and she had been offered a scholarship based on her recent achievements. The offer was both thrilling and intimidating. It meant leaving home, adjusting to a new environment, and competing with some of the most talented students in the country. But she felt ready. She had learned to face challenges with determination, and she knew that this opportunity could shape her future in ways she had only dreamed of. Her parents were supportive, but also cautious. Leaving home was a big step, and they worried about how she would adapt to life in the city. Yet, they trusted her judgment and believed in her abilities. After long discussions and careful planning, they agreed that she should pursue the scholarship. The decision was emotional, but filled with hope for the future. Moving to the city was a significant adjustment. The bustling streets, the fast pace of life, and the sheer scale of the music academy were overwhelming at first. She missed the quiet comfort of her hometown and the familiar rhythms of her daily life. But she reminded herself that every great musician had faced challenges, and that growth often came from stepping outside one's comfort zone at the academy. She encountered students from diverse backgrounds, each with their own stories and talents. Some were confident and outspoken, while others, like her, were quiet and introspective. Initially, she felt like an outsider, unsure how to fit in among so many talented peers. But she soon realized that her dedication and humility set her apart. She focused on her practice. Learning from her instructors and observing the strengths of her classmates, her days were filled with lessons, practice sessions, and performances. She discovered new techniques, explored complex compositions, and began to develop her own unique style. Her instructors recognized her potential and encouraged her to participate in competitions and recitals, both within the academy and in the broader city. Each performance was a chance to learn, grow, connect with audiences in a deeper way. Despite the rigorous schedule, she found moments of joy and inspiration. She made a few close friends who shared her passion for music, and together they would discuss compositions, exchange ideas, and support each other through challenges. These friendships became a source of strength, helping her navigate the pressures of the academy and the city. As months passed, her confidence grew. She began to receive invitations to perform at local concerts and charity events, her reputation spreading beyond the academy. Each performance was an opportunity to share her music with the world, to tell stories and evoke emotions through her playing. The girl who had once been underestimated at the piano had become a young musician with a growing voice and a message that resonated with audiences. Through all of this, she remained humble and grounded. She knew that talent alone was not enough. Persistence, patience, and a love for music were essential. Every challenge she faced, from demanding instructors to rigorous practice schedules, became a lesson in resilience. She learned to embrace both success and setbacks, understanding that each experience contributed to her growth as an artist and as a person. By the end of the first year at the academy, She had transformed in ways even she had not anticipated. Her skills had matured, her confidence had strengthened, and her understanding of music had deepened. She had faced the unknown, overcome self-doubt, proven to herself that dedication and passion could create extraordinary results. The quiet girl who had once been overlooked at school had now become a young musician, poised for remarkable achievements. Ready to embrace the next chapter of her journey with courage, determination, and an unwavering love for the piano. The second year at the music academy brought new challenges and opportunities for the girl. The city was no longer intimidating. It had become familiar, a place where she could grow and explore her talent freely. She had settled into a rhythm, balancing intense practice sessions with lessons, performances, and moments of rest. The academy was demanding, but she thrived in the environment. Finding joy in every new piece she learned and every opportunity to perform, her instructors pushed her to explore styles and techniques she had never tried before. From classical compositions to modern pieces, she learned to adapt her playing to different rhythms, moods, and expressions. Each challenge was met with determination. She would spend hours analyzing the notes, understanding the structure of the music, and experimenting with how to convey emotion through every touch of the keys. Mistakes were frustrating, but she saw them as part of the learning process. Stepping stones toward mastery, the girl began to gain recognition within the academy. Her instructors praised her dedication and the depth of feeling in her performances. Fellow students who had once been distant or competitive started seeking her advice and insight. Slowly, she became a respected presence among her peers, admired not just for her skill, but also for her humility and focus. She had learned to lead without speaking loudly, to inspire through example rather than words. Outside the academy, opportunities continued to grow. Invitations to perform at local and regional events came more frequently, and each performance strengthened her confidence. She discovered that playing in front of an audience was both exhilarating and humbling. The applause and admiration were gratifying, but the real reward came from knowing she had touched the hearts of those listening. Music had become a bridge, connecting her inner world with the emotions of others in a profound way at home. Her parents continued to support her in every possible way. They would travel to the city to attend her performances whenever they could, cheering her on from the audience. Their pride and encouragement were a constant source of strength, reminding her that she was never alone in her journey. The bond she shared with her family deepened, strengthened by shared dreams, sacrifices, and celebrations. Despite her growing success, she faced moments of doubt and insecurity. Some of her peers at the academy were exceptionally talented, and she sometimes questioned whether she belonged among them. She would compare herself to others, feeling a pang of inadequacy. But she had learned to channel those feelings into motivation rather than fear. Each time she felt uncertain, she would return to the piano, letting the music guide her and restore her confidence. She knew that comparison could be a trap. Her focus had to remain on her own growth and journey. One day, she was invited to perform at a prestigious city concert that featured renowned musicians and rising stars. The honor was both exciting and intimidating. The concert hall was massive, the audience distinguished, and the expectations high. She spent weeks preparing, practicing long hours to perfect each piece and ensure that her performance would be flawless. The pressure was intense, but she welcomed it as an opportunity to test herself and grow. On the night of the concert, the atmosphere was electric. The audience included music critics, instructors from other institutions, and fellow musicians. As she stepped onto the stage, she felt the weight of the moment, but also a deep sense of calm. She had faced challenges before, and she knew that her preparation and dedication had brought her here. She sat at the grand piano, closed her eyes, and let the music flow. From the first note, she captivated the audience. Her playing was precise yet expressive, each melody carrying emotion that resonated with everyone listening. The judges and critics watched with admiration, whispering to one another about the depth of her talent and the maturity of her performance. The music seemed to tell her story, a journey from quiet beginnings to remarkable achievement. A tale of perseverance, patience, and unwavering dedication. By the end of the performance, The audience rose to their feet, applauding loudly and cheering. People were moved, some to tears, by the beauty and emotion of her music. She stood, bowed gracefully, and walked off stage, her heart filled with joy and satisfaction. She had not only performed for the audience, but had shared a piece of herself. And the connection she had created was unforgettable. The success of the concert opened new doors. Invitations to perform in other cities, at festivals, and in collaborative projects began to arrive. Music critics wrote glowing reviews, highlighting her ability to blend technical skill with emotional depth. Yet, despite the growing recognition, she remained humble and focused. She knew that each performance was a chance to learn, to grow, and to connect with others. Rather than a platform for ego, back at the academy, she continued to challenge herself. She began composing more complex pieces, experimenting with new styles and harmonies. Her instructors encouraged her to explore her creativity, reminding her that true artistry comes from both skill and imagination. She spent long hours in the studio, refining her compositions, sometimes playing late into the night, driven by a passion that seemed endless. Her peers noticed the change as well. They saw not only her talent, but also her dedication and the way she approached challenges with patience and determination. Some were inspired to work harder, while others sought her guidance in developing their own skills. She became a quiet mentor, leading through example rather than words, demonstrating that perseverance and love for the craft were as important as natural ability. Throughout this period, she also learned to balance her life outside music. She spent time exploring the city, meeting new people, and experiencing culture, art, and life beyond the academy. These experiences enriched her understanding of the world and deepened the emotional resonance in her music. Every new encounter, every conversation, every moment of observation added layers to her creativity. Shaping her compositions and performances in subtle but meaningful ways, her family remained a constant support system. They celebrated her achievements, comforted her during moments of doubt, and reminded her of the values that had guided her from the beginning: humility, hard work, and love for music. Their belief in her never wavered, and she drew strength from that trust and encouragement by the end of her second year at the academy. The girl had grown in ways that surpassed even her own expectations. She had faced challenges that tested her skill, patience, and resilience. She had performed in front of critical audiences, competed against talented peers, and navigated the pressures of growing recognition. Through it all, she remained focused on her passion, her music, and her personal growth. She had transformed from the quiet, underestimated student in a small town to a confident, talented young musician ready to embrace new opportunities. Her journey was far from over, but she had proven to herself and to the world that dedication, perseverance, and love for her craft could overcome doubt and expectation. The girl who had once been underestimated at the piano had become a young artist with a powerful voice, poised for a future filled with music, inspiration, and endless possibilities. The third year at the academy was a turning point for the young pianist. By now, she had settled fully into the rhythm of her life in the city, balancing demanding lessons, rigorous practice, and increasingly high-profile performances. Every day was an opportunity to grow, and she approached each with the same quiet focus that had carried her. From the small town to this moment, her instructors continued to challenge her, pushing her to explore advanced techniques, complex compositions, and emotional expression in ways she had never attempted before. She took these lessons seriously, dedicating long hours to mastering each nuance. Sometimes the work was exhausting, and there were moments when she questioned herself, wondering if she could truly rise to the expectations placed upon her. But with each challenge, she discovered new strength within herself. She had learned that growth often came from discomfort, and she welcomed it. Composing her own music had become a central part of her daily routine. She would spend hours at the piano, letting her thoughts, dreams, and emotions flow through her fingers. The melodies she created were deeply personal, reflecting her experiences, her hopes, and even her fears. Some pieces were joyful and light, others somber and reflective, but all carried the same authenticity that had always distinguished her performances. She began to share these compositions with her instructors, who encouraged her to perform them publicly. Helping her build confidence as both a performer and a composer, opportunities for performances increased steadily. Invitations to city concerts, charity events, and private recitals came more frequently. Each time she performed, she connected with her audience in a way that went beyond technical skill. Her music told stories, evoked emotions, and left lasting impressions on everyone who listened. People were not just impressed, they were moved. Reviews in local publications praised not only her technique, but the emotional depth of her performances. Noting how a young musician could communicate so powerfully through music, despite the growing recognition, she remained humble. She knew that every performance, every composition, and every achievement was a step in a lifelong journey. Her focus was not on fame or accolades, but on the music itself. Each day brought new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities to grow, and she embraced them all with dedication and love for her craft. Her peers at the academy, many of whom had initially been competitive or distant, now approached her with respect and admiration. Some sought guidance in improving their own skills, and she willingly shared her knowledge and experience. Through her quiet mentorship, she inspired others, showing that determination, patience, and passion could lead to extraordinary results. She had become a role model, not through loud words or showmanship, but through consistent effort and the genuine quality of her music. Balancing her personal life with the demands of the academy and performances was still challenging. She missed her family and the simplicity of her hometown at times, but she stayed connected through phone calls, letters, and visits whenever possible. Her parents continued to be her biggest supporters, offering encouragement, advice, and unconditional love. Their belief in her had never wavered. She drew strength from knowing they were always there. One significant milestone came when she was invited to participate in a national Lotto music competition. The event would feature the best young pianists from across the country. It's a highly competitive stage that would test her skill, endurance, and composure. Preparing for it required months of focused practice, mental preparation, and emotional resilience. She approached it systematically, breaking down each piece, analyzing the structure, and refining every detail to ensure her performance would be both technically flawless and emotionally powerful. As the competition approached, her nerves were understandably high. The day she arrived at the venue, she was awed by the scale and prestige of the event. The stage was grand, the audience immense, and the other competitors exceptionally talented. It would have been easy to feel intimidated, but she reminded herself of how far she had come, how much she had learned, and the countless hours of practice that had prepared her for this moment. When her turn came, she walked confidently to the piano, took a deep breath, and began to play. From the first note, it was clear that her performance was exceptional. Each piece she played was precise, expressive, and emotionally captivating. The audience was entranced, the judges impressed, and her fellow competitors inspired. The music told a story of perseverance, resilience, and passion, the story of a girl who had been underestimated, but had risen through dedication and hard work. By the end of her performance, the audience erupted in applause. She rose from the piano, bowed gracefully, and walked off the stage with a sense of fulfillment. The recognition was immense, but the true reward was the connection she had made through her music. It was a moment that reaffirmed her belief in herself and in the power of perseverance. The results of the competition were announced later that evening. She had won first place, a triumph that brought both pride and a sense of accomplishment. Her parents were there to celebrate, their eyes filled with tears of joy and pride. In that moment, she realized that all the quiet hours of practice, all the sacrifices, and all the challenges had led to this moment. She had proven, first to herself and then to the world, that talent combined with dedication could achieve extraordinary things. Following the competition, her life entered a new phase. Invitations to perform internationally began to arrive, along with offers to collaborate with well-known musicians. Each opportunity presented new challenges and required careful decision-making. but she embraced them with enthusiasm and confidence. Her music continued to evolve, enriched by experiences, collaborations, and exposure to different cultures and styles. Despite the growing demands, she remained committed to her roots. She often returned to her hometown, performing at local events and inspiring the younger generation. She shared her story with students who were beginning their own musical journeys, emphasizing the importance of patience, hard work, and believing in oneself. Her journey had come full circle, from the quiet, underestimated girl to a role model and accomplished musician. Through it all, she never lost sight of why she started playing the piano in the first place, the love for music itself. She understood that accolades, recognition, and opportunities were milestones. But the essence of her journey was the music and the joy it brought to her and to those who listened. Every performance, every composition, every note played was a testament to her dedication and passion. As she continued to grow as an artist, she also developed a deeper understanding of herself. She learned to balance ambition with humility, to embrace challenges with courage, and to find inspiration in both success and setbacks. She had faced doubt, envy, and fear, but she had overcome them through perseverance, patience, and an unwavering belief in her own abilities. By the end of her third year, the girl who had once been underestimated at the piano had become a young musician with remarkable talent, poise, and vision. Her journey was far from over, but she had established a foundation of skill, experience, and character that would carry her forward. She had learned that true success is not measured solely by recognition, but by growth, connection, and the ability to touch lives through one's art. Looking back, she remembered the shy, quiet girl who had spent countless hours practicing in a small room, unnoticed and underestimated. That girl had been the beginning of her journey, the spark that ignited a lifelong passion. Now, standing on the threshold of even greater opportunities, she knew that every note she played was a continuation of that story, a story of perseverance, resilience, and the transformative power of dedication and love for music. Her future was bright, filled with endless possibilities. She would continue to perform, compose, and inspire, carrying with her the lessons learned along the way. The girl who had once been underestimated had proven that with patience, hard work, and unwavering belief in oneself, anything was possible. And through it all, her music would continue to speak, connecting hearts and leaving a lasting impact on the world.